It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. From Fantha Tracks TV, this is Good Morning Tatooine!
Good morning, Tatooine. Indeed, the horrors of the Festival of Food is behind us. We're gearing up for the new year. And so it's time for our end of year review show. So joining me is my co-host, as always, Mr. Paul Naylor.
Evening.
And from fathertracks.com, Mr. Mark Newbold.
Evening.
Was there a delay in the internet there? Was that just a delay in Mr. Newbold?
I'm in the satellite link.
The satellite link is
Oh,
broken.
massive delay.
There we go. We're going to keep that in the show. Why not?
This is going to be good.
It's the end of the year show, so that's the highlight of my year so far. Just the pregnant pause there. Mark, we're gotten to the end of another year. A lot of articles posted to fathertracks.com.
It's been a busy one. Yeah. I don't know what we're over 20,000 now for the whole site. I think I hit 15,000 just for me in 7 years, which is I don't know whether it's cool or sad, but
Sad.
It is what it is. So yeah, it's busy. Very, very busy. Never slows down.
Never does. Lots been happening. A lot of releases, books, toys, comics, TV shows, cartoons, games. We're going to try and cover the whole basis in this show. And we'll also review the latest episode of Skeleton Crew in our segment of Bone Voyage. But let's start off with literature and your favourite book from the past year. Mr. Newbold, I'll start with you.
For me, it's Living Force by John Jackson Miller. I thought it was fantastic. Absolutely loved it. That sort of pre-Phantom Menace era was just so interesting. He's such a good writer. He fleshes out all the characters. There's voices been given to characters we've never heard before, in such detail anyway. And it was a really good adventure. I love the history of the world that they went back to, the logic of returning after all those years. It was just a really interesting storyline, and that would be my pick for this year.
And Paul, I know you're not a huge fan of Star Wars literature, or I'm not a big buyer of Star Wars literature, but
I've got an answer. Now, you did say best Star Wars book. Now, I've gone for more down the factual route. So I like the recently released updated Star Wars encyclopedia.
oh yes, yeah.
It's always good to keep on top of Star Wars reference guide, especially these days when there's so much Star Wars about. It's prolific. It's pretty much covers anything and everything you could imagine. If you can think it, it's in there. It's a cracking book. If you haven't got it, source one, because it's just a great reference guide. Somebody mentions a name or a time period, and you're trying to think of where the characters are on that timeline. You know, from way back all the way to the Old Republic, and to where we are now. Well, it's essential, really. It's a really, really good read.
I'm going to cheat slightly with my choice because technically it's a book that wasn't released this year,
Oh,
but I managed to get someone to pick me up a copy of it at New York Comic Con. So it's Reign of the Empire. So I got the advanced readers arc of it, and it's obviously the Mon Mothma centric Rise of the Rebellion, I would call it, novel that's coming out in, I think it's February of next year. And I'm about 3/4 of the way through it and gripped by it. Really, really good. So that has been my favourite read so far this year. And it's a controversial topic for me because I'm a big fan of Palpatine. And it's really it's about all these nasty people that are trying to undermine democracy, is how I read it.
so when is it actually out?
It is out I think it's the first week of February it's out.
Right. So you've got a proof copy. Have you been sort of doing like the edit?
No, a lucky number of people at New York Comic Con that went to the Del Rey booth were able to pick up a copy. So
Excellent.
someone was able to pick one up for me, and I've been enjoying that over the last few weeks. And so that's my pick of the year. So that's one for the watchers at home to look forward to picking up early in the new year.
Nice one.
So that's our picks for best book of the year. Not a unanimous decision, but a nice range there, I think. Next up, we're going to pick best toy. So Paul, as the toy master of the three of us, can you tell us what would be your pick?
Okay. Now, whilst I don't own this, in the last week or so, there's been a lot of excitement online about people receiving the Ghost, the HasLab Ghost. It does look immense, and we know people within the group that have got it. Obviously, Jonathan Atkins talked about it in one of our shows. Yeah, that just is an absolute amazing sort of iteration of that ship. It's huge. It's got such display ability as well as playability, which, let's face it, most of the people that are buying this are our age. I doubt they're running around their house going, "Ooh," but you never know. They might be. But it's amazing. And I like the fact that there's been certain unboxing videos of it. The way it's packaged, I mean, you can see where the money goes. The money goes in all the thought process of how we can pack this so that it's protected to the hilt, but also when people open it, each time they turn over a piece of cardboard, they're losing it because they're thinking, "Wow, this is incredible." Even the figures are incredibly protected in this one. And let's face it, there's a lot of people out there that just want the figures. So it's yeah, that for me is the toy of the year.
And Mark, you're not as big a toy collector, but you pick up the odd item. You've got an impressive collection in the room just there behind you. So do you have a particular item that you've picked up in the past year?
I do, and I will show it to you. Just stay there 1 second.
Oh,
the last time he did this, the laptop went flying. Just warning people.
It didn't end well last time, did it? Mine is a Ghost as well, but it's the jazz weights and sounds. The Phantom comes off the back. There's figures all throughout the thing. The canopy pops off. This was the Amazon exclusive that came with 2 Y-wings as well. I'm thrilled to bits with this. It just looks incredible. So whilst I decided not to go HasLab route this time, because I did get a Razor Crest a couple of years ago and just moved it on because I wasn't able to display it. It was just too big. I knew the Ghost would be even bigger than that. This is very achievable in terms of finding a home for it, which I haven't quite yet. But yeah, this is my toy of the year, the Jazzwares Ghost. I think it's fantastic.
that's a good shout. That's
Very
a
good
nice
shout.
alternative for those who couldn't afford the bigger version, yeah.
Yeah. Don't you move about too much, though, because your camera is breaking up.
He is the max headroom of Fantatrax. He really is, isn't he?
Yeah. It's the second category, and I'm going to slightly cheat again, because
I feel like it today.
I'm going to slightly cheat again in my answer in the second category, because I don't know if it's classed as a toy. I think it would be, but it's the Kiadi Monday lightsaber that was the Disney Park exclusive.
I'd go with that. Yeah, why
right.
not?
But the reason it's my favorite toy
That's
is
a good
because it
shout.
came with a comic. So I was a big comic collector. I gave it up about 2 years ago, and the Kiadi Monday lightsaber bizarrely came with a variant for the Galaxy's Edge comic, which
Wow.
ended like 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
But I had every other comic in that range, all the park comics. So all the Galactic Star Cruiser comics, all the Galaxy Edge comics, including press variants and Imagineer variants, which are incredibly hard to get hold of. So I had to keep my collection complete. So I bought the Kiadi Monday lightsaber in
So
order
you got
to get the
you
comic.
haven't got the lightsaber.
But
I thought you'd managed to convince somebody to give you the comic.
Yeah, but it is a really beautiful construction. And
Yeah.
I don't have one of the lightsabers to actually put in the hilt, so I might have to get that.
Oh, so it's just the hilt itself, is it?
Just the hilt.
Really?
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
comes in a nice wooden box, really nice.
What colour was his blade? Was he green or blue?
Oh, good
Can't think
question.
what colour.
I think it was a blue, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, possibly, yeah. Yeah.
I think it was blue. Yeah.
And of course, he made his big comeback in the Acolyte this year as well.
Yes. Looking a bit worse for wear, but yeah, he was
His younger self.
his younger self looked worse.
But it wasn't my pick for best comic, which is our next category. I'm actually going to go with the Ahsoka adaptation by Rodney Barnes. I know Marvel get criticised a lot for their doing adaptations, but I kind of love them. And I actually enjoyed the comic more than I enjoyed the TV series. And I don't know if that's purely because you got more time to sort of delve into the characters a little bit more with the comic, I felt, than they did with the TV show, especially Ahsoka. Ahsoka to me didn't come across well as a character in the TV show, and I'm not familiar with her because I'm not into the Star Wars animation, so this was a way for me to sort of touch base a little bit more deeper with the character. So the Ahsoka comic is my pick for best comic of the year.
You, Mark?
It's a comic that's not quite finished yet. I'm really weirdly enjoying the four-parter Ewoks comic.
Okay.
Inquisitors that finished not long before was really good fun as a sort of little short standalone thing. But the Ewoks one has blown me away. It's totally folding in stuff from the old Star comics from the 80s. It's nailing the vibe and the feel of what the Ewoks are all about. It's pulling little bits from left, right, and centre. Princess Ganesa's in there. The Red Ghost is in there. You know, there was a Condor dragon in this issue. There's just all sorts of little things from way back in the past, and it's beautifully drawn. The covers by Pete Wood are phenomenal. I'm really enjoying Ewoks. So even though there's been some big stuff going on this year, I mean, Bounty Hunters finished at the start of this year, which I adored. I'm going to pick something that's still sort of not quite finished, but I'm going to say Ewoks. I've really enjoyed Ewoks.
Okay, that's just a choice. I didn't expect that one.
No.
I did it. I started reading it.
Mr. Naylor, for comics for you.
I'm not much of a comic buyer these days. I've got quite a considerable run of the Star Wars comics that were released about 2016, was it? When
Yeah.
it came back to Marvel? Yeah. So I've got that run. But the one that I would really like to get hold of, which I haven't read, but if I would love it, would be the Jango Fett one.
Okay.
That would be good for me. I don't think. Well, actually, I think Jango Fett's starting to get a little bit more love in the fan community. Certainly in the last year or so. He kind of faded from memory, didn't he? It's always been about Boba Fett, and then it was always about the Mandalorian, and Jango Fett never really gets much of a look in. So yeah, I'd like to see that. I take it that's probably a comic that you've got, Brian. You've probably had a read of.
There's a good couple of hundred variants to that miniseries.
Is it a good story?
It's solid. I would say it's solid. I kind of agree with Mark in terms of if you're into bounty hunters, the main bounty hunter series is the one to go for. But it's a nice little segue off of that, I guess.
Yeah, I think when the trailer came out for Attack of the Clones all those years ago, and we saw this character that looked very much like Boba Fett, it was like, whoa, and I still remember that feeling of is that meant to be Boba Fett? Who is this character? And then we found out obviously that it was his dad, and I know Star Wars tends to have a bit of an issue with being quite a small galaxy in terms of the amount of characters that interlink with each other, but I did think that was a nice touch, having him as the start of the clones. So yeah,
Technically, is he his dad?
well, he's not. He's himself, isn't he?
He's just another clone of himself, isn't it?
Yeah, it brings to mind that good old-fashioned saying, "Go yourself." Yeah.
Next up, probably a difficult subject, maybe for 2024, because there's been a lot of controversy around it. But Star Wars live action hits and misses once more, I think would be the way to describe 2024. I'll start with you, Mark. If have you had a favourite show or a favourite moment from Star Wars live action this past year?
Yeah, undoubtedly favourite show is again another ongoing thing. Skeleton Crew's been a breath of fresh air. I've really enjoyed it. I like the tone of it, the vibe of it, the look of it. I like the performances. It's working for me so far. I know I've got other episodes ahead, so that's been great fun. I would say Star Wars live action moment of the year was Night, the episode of The Acolyte where Kamir goes sort of postal on the Jedi and takes most of them out. I thought it was phenomenally well done and thrilling. A high point in a series that had very mixed ups and downs, and obviously more downs because it's not coming back. But when it was good, it was very, very good, and when it was bad, it was awful. So I would say that was definitely the high point of live action for me. But as a consistent thing, definitely Skeleton Crew's been fantastic. So mixed bag, and very hopeful for 25 with Andor as well.
Paul?
Yeah, same as you, Mark. Looking forward to Andor big time. But for me, head and shoulders above the Acolytes is the Skeleton Crew. Really enjoyed all the episodes so far. I did kind of think that episode 4 was a little bit of a filler until I discussed it at length with Brian and John. And it made me start thinking about it slightly differently. And then I rewatched it. And the thing that's really sort of dawned on me is the significance of the at prefix planets and how they could all potentially be identical in a sense, but then given a different scenario. So I find that whole concept fascinating. So yeah, for me, the Skeleton Crew, certainly episodes 1, 2, and 3, loved those. 4 wasn't sure about, but now absolutely love it. And in some ways has probably become a favourite.
Basically, all the art planets, Neil's got a different woman on every planet. That's kind of how it works. I'm sticking with the
Team Runa. Team Runa.
So, and of course, we're going to see some more Neil's dad, Noel, who's popped up in the card game. We're going to see him as well. I'm hoping he's going to take Neil to the woodshed and sort him out.
What was your favourite then, Brian? Were you?
Well, the last 30 seconds of The Acolyte was tremendous. And it gave you everything you want with Star Wars live action. Gave you live action Yoda and Darth Plagueis, which people would absolutely fall over themselves to have a series about Plagueis and Yoda. And that was maybe the direction the Acolyte was going to, but it kind of feels like it was just sandwiched in there at the end rather, of a very poor story arc that kind of makes you excited for what it could have been and what it wasn't. But I kind of agree with you. I'm enjoying Skeleton Crew, and I'm enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would.
Yeah, same here.
I came in with a attitude of, I think it's going to be fine. It's going to be Saturday afternoon television, and it's just going to be okay, and it'll get us through the holiday season. And but I'm actually looking forward to each episode to see where the story's going. They've actually got a really clever little mystery going on, and I kind of like when Star Wars goes into different genres, and the comics have done really well with Cavan Scott and his Halloween kind of comics. The horror ones look kind of emulating the Hammersmith films, and I kind of like Star Wars going into this sort of mystery kind of genre, and the fact it's for kids is kind of irrelevant. It's really not a kids' TV show. It may have
They're just
kids
4
at the heart
characters,
of it,
aren't
but
they? Yeah.
I'm just hoping that we get very soon. We discover who the supervisor is, and I hope that they open the door and he's just there, and it's just a skeleton, and the droids have taken over the planet and are basically running the planet.
Well, when we talk about
that's what I want now.
Yeah, when we talk about episode 5 later in this show, who knows what we'll be disclosing?
That's true. So we'll find out very shortly, perhaps. So yeah, Skeleton Crew's my surprise pick for live action. We could
Yeah.
probably jump ahead and pick next year's end of year favorite live action because we really
Andor.
only got Andor to pick from. But
Yeah.
hopes are high this time for Andor, and I think that's a added pressure to the show. Different ball game than maybe my attitude towards Skeleton Crew. I expect a great deal from Andor. And but I appear to be the only person that's remembering that the whole premise of Andor at the beginning was he was looking for his sister. Everyone else has forgotten that, so I'm hoping that mystery is addressed in season 2. But we'll stop and find out. Next up, a category that's just not in my wheelhouse, but best cartoon or Star Wars animation.
Ooh.
I'm going to go with the Grogu episodes that have been coming out on the Japanese Instagram, purely because they're incredibly short. But Mark, you're much more attuned to Star Wars animation. There has been quite a few episodes released this year, so have you got a favourite amongst them?
Yeah, I love the Bad Batch. I'm gonna miss Bad Batch not coming back next year, so I will pick that as my animation of the year. I thought they wrapped that up so well. It was a brilliant finale. Step forward in time, wasn't too maudlin. You knew where the characters kind of ended up. It was as near to a happy ending as you could hope for with these kind of characters, and I didn't expect that. I thought most, if not all, would get taken out, and they didn't. So I love that. And the animation was beautiful. It just rolled off the back of Clone Wars season 7 and just kept that consistency. So I think it was the right decision to stop it because that story had been told. But if they'd wanted to carry it on for another couple of years, I'd have been more than happy. So definitely my choice for the year is Bad Batch.
Yeah, and the same for me. The Bad Batch, the whole concept of it was just great, wasn't it? The fact that and they were introduced in the Clone Wars series. They were in that final arc where there was essentially three storylines. One of them being the Bad Batch, and then when they got their own series, that was great. But yeah, the finale to the final season was superb. Like you say, that time jump and the fact that it was very sort of, it was almost calm, wasn't it? It was like, everybody was sort of like just living a peaceful existence. It was almost like a retirement sort of a demonstration of how retirement could be. Just chill, sit there, and don't do a lot. It was left a little bit ambiguous as to what happened to Wrecker, I think, wasn't it?
I think they were all there on the island. They're all there together. You didn't see them. What I did like was the fact that Tech didn't get resurrected. Even though everybody loved Tech, he died and he stayed dead.
But there was a nod. There was a nod
I think,
to him. Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally. So they played it really well, like you say. They could have gone down different routes and they didn't. They kept it. They were kind of honest.
Yeah,
that makes sense. It worked well.
I mean, you go back to when Clone Wars first came out, and it was very much an animation for kids, especially that first cinematic release that we got in the UK. Very much for kids. But then that soon shifted in tone, and then that tone continued throughout, and it became very much a way of them telling a live action story, if you like, but using animated characters. There was no holding back, and Bad Batch certainly lived up to what the Clone Wars was before it. Yeah, brilliant stuff. So yeah, Bad Batch will be badly missed. Yeah.
And interestingly, obviously we've got Star Wars Celebration coming up in April. There's kind of hinting at the fact that anime is going to be a big part of that. We've obviously got Star Wars Visions to look forward to, but even going back to Celebration when it was last in Anaheim, they hinted at potentially doing a lot more in the anime space. So we may see announcements there. And we've yet to get what's coming next after the Bad Batch. And I know there's been a little bit of restructuring within Lucasfilm Animation, so perhaps Celebration will be the time to make some of these announcements as to what's coming next.
Yeah. Some of the projects as well. There's been many that have been announced well in advance, some that haven't actually come to fruition. But then every now and then they'll suddenly drop something without you even thinking. You've not even heard anything about it. So there was earlier in the year. There was the was it the new Jedi Order or whatever it was called? What was that short run season?
Tales of the Jedi.
Tales of the
That's
Jedi.
it. Sorry, yeah, Tales of the Jedi. Yeah.
Tales
Which
of the
was,
Sith, I
was
think. Wasn't it,
really
this year?
good. Yeah, really good stuff, but just not as quality as Bad Batch.
Yeah. Next up, Game of the Year. So Star Wars Game of the Year. I'll go first on this one. I'm going to pick Dark Forces, the remaster
Yeah,
that came back in February, I think it was. I grew up with the Dark Forces game. It was groundbreaking when it originally came out, and so it was great to get that back on sort of modern gaming machines and relive the glory days. Obviously, it aged in its time since it's been away, but it's such a classic, and I really enjoyed having a little play about with Dark Forces Remaster.
yeah.
Mr. Newbold.
I haven't bought or played a single game this year, so I honestly can't give you an answer. The only thing I could even remotely hint towards, and I think Paul will appreciate this, was we had a blast at Hunters at Celebration
Yeah.
last year, and that was great fun. And
Yeah.
now Hunters is out, I think I can only honestly say with any kind of vague knowledge that I'd have to say Hunters, because we had a blast at that. I did have a little blast on the mobile, and it was good fun. But I am generally rubbish at games, and so I'm the worst person to ask. But so I'd have to say Hunters, just based on the numbers game of not having played anything else. I do want to have a crack at Outlaws, and I haven't even got around to having a look at downloading or getting a copy of that. But that will definitely be on the list at some point. But yeah, I'd have to say Hunters.
Yeah.
And
For
Mr.
me-
Naylor.
Yeah, for me it would be Outlaws. I've not played it myself, but I have seen when my son's been around here, he's shown me some of the sort of the playable levels where people have actually recorded like hours and hours and hours of them actually playing out the various levels. My only criticism of it, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, to go to the extent of the quality of that game, to not have the choice of playable characters does seem a little bit weird. I get that they probably want you to just follow that one character, but I think there's a lot of people out there that would like to either play as a male character or a female character, and you could even, by choosing the one character, you could still have the other character stepping alongside you or flying alongside you. So it could be that you're playing as one character of your choice, but effectively there's two of you going around doing the different stuff. So I just think that it's a missed opportunity more than anything else. But as for what I've seen of it's amazing, and I think I will, when I do catch up with me tech and my gaming tech. It's a game that I probably enjoy. So yeah, so for me, Outlaws.
Yeah, I get that. I always compare it to any kind of game. I compare it to Skyrim, which I think is one of the greatest games ever made. I've been playing it for more than a decade and will still happily pick it up and still play it.
Yeah.
Where you could be any gender, any alien, any character from across that whole game, and you could be that character, and the story would still evolve in much and such the same manner. With little nuances to dictate for the choices that you'd make for that character.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a shame that they didn't do something like that with Star Wars. And I get they're trying to have a narrative, but it's a game. So you've got to let people
You
play.
can still have that same narrative with a different character, can't you?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So next up, we've got Best Podcast. So obviously, you want to pick one from Fantasy Tracks Radio, but you can be controversial and pick one from somewhere else. So as the leader of the podcast at fantatrax.com, Mr. Newbold, we'll start with you and let you pick what's been your favourite podcast for the year, because you've appeared on a great many this year.
Yeah, I've been on a few. I'm going to pick. Right. Okay. I'm going to pick two. And they're both British. I'm going to pick Star Wars Sessions which is an absolute bottle of pop, eternally fun, full of energy, full of wit and wisdom. The guys are just fantastic. So definitely Sessions, and also a newer podcast that increasingly people are starting to become aware of, Explore the Force, which is co-hosted by Jack, our good buddy who hops into your GMT mentions quite often, and Jimmy over in the States. They do a great job as well. It's very varied, very interesting, increasingly getting the word out there. So I would pick those two as two great examples of shows. Perennial shows, RFR still out there doing its thing, and there's plenty of other shows. Coffee with Kenobi is constantly good, so there's always great shows out there. But I'm going to wave the flag for the UK and say Explore the Force and Star Wars Sessions.
And Mr. Naylor.
Again, he's pipped me to it. I was going to say Matt and Luke at Sessions because they are genuinely funny, particularly Luke, who still to this day reminds me of the lead singer of the Wonder Stuff, Miles Hunt. But he just got that. He's like a bottle of warm pop, isn't he? He
is. He literally
good
is.
Lad. It's a funny show. It's often irreverent. One thing when I see him next, and I know it doesn't bother you, Mark, but the fact that he called you Newbold gets right on my nerves. So I will be having a word with Mr. Bly when I meet him.
It's all good with me.
I'm going to pick one from our own group of shows, and that's Desert Planet Discs. And I pick this because my knowledge of music is shockingly bad. My iPod, I still have an iPod.
Wow.
It's quality. It's quality. So many songs in your pocket. It's genius.
Brian, because he's Scottish, is it an OC iPod?
It's a tracking one, you know, where it still clicks when you track it round.
That was poor.
That's beautiful, man. It's tactile. You can feel it when you push it, and it clicks. It's brilliant, man. Love it. Anyway, can't put anything new on it, so it's kind of stuck there. It's like a memento. It's stuck there in time. But anyway, so my music knowledge is terrible. I'm still stuck in the 90s and earlier. And my musical taste, I don't go beyond hits 90s on the radio, you know, just so Desert Planet Discs is kind of my education of what's happening in the music world out there. And I know it's Star Wars centric, but that's what I love. So I pick them for keeping me entertained with new modern music, and they've had a great range of guests on as well. So I always enjoy that. Something very different from the podcast realm. And my second pick, because you've been cheating and picking second picks, it's not a Star Wars podcast, but it's one which I think is absolute genius, and it's just in my wheelhouse. It's a podcast called Talking Talk Tour. Right, so everybody should go on YouTube, type in Talking Talk Tour, and it's just two guys who talk about the Talk Tour podcast. So it's literally a podcast about another podcast, and they just sit there and drink wine, and it's just the funniest thing I've ever seen. And I would like someone in the Star Wars realm to do something similar, where they just pick a Star Wars podcast, and every week they just dissect it.
If you two are both having two, I'm having two.
Go for two.
So I'm going to go for Off Menu with Ed Gamble and James Acaster, where they basically have a celebrity and they talk about what their favourite meal would be. If you haven't listened to it, it is genius stuff. But again, we could do a Star Warsy version of that. Blue milk or green milk? Blue milk or green milk? Blue milk or green milk?
Next up, best Star Wars licensee. What licensee has come up with the best range of products consistent over the years, or over this past year rather? I'm cheating because I'm picking the one that I'm wearing, because I'm going with Roosevelt's, because over the past year, what an amazing wide cast of shirts and t-shirts and polos and koozies and golf covers, hoodies, bomber jackets, absolutely insane designs. And there's so many designs that it almost swallows it up. Each one doesn't get enough attention in a way. I absolutely love them. So you'll catch me pretty much every week on GMT wearing a different one. And I've gone with my Return of the Jedi because it's a big anniversary.
Certainly is. Yeah, that's a solid choice. It's a solid
Yep.
choice. I was gonna say Roosevelt's, but let's think of an alternative. I mean, okay, they
If you
still
if you
make
pick
some mis
Hasbro, there's going to be riots.
they make some missteps every now and then, but they seem to be back on track. Ladies and gentlemen, Hasbro.
Hey!
No, I do really genuinely feel that it went through a little bit of a lackluster period. Um, but I think they listened, and some of the stuff that they've got coming up, some of the stuff that they've shown that they are going to be making, they've listened about people's wants for the retro line. So we've got some figures that should and could have been produced back in the day, that are now going to be out there for people. You've got stuff coming up, certainly in the Black Series line from Shadows of the Empire. You've got Ziza, you've got an improved version of Leia as Bosch, and you've also got a fantastic Luke Skywalker in his guard disguise. So they are coming up with some interesting ideas. It's been a while, but I think they're back in the room. It's a little bit like when U2 went a bit downhill for a while and then came back with a good album. This is what Hasbro's done.
I've never been right since they took away my right to wear a gold bikini.
Well, I'm grateful.
Mr. Newbold, you cover the news every day, 365 days a year. You have covered many product launches. Has there been a licensee that maybe it's just one set of products that they've launched this year, but you just thought that's unique, that's different, that's exciting, or maybe it's a licensee that's been consistent throughout the year? Your take, your best licensee of the year.
It's boring because I've already mentioned them for me, and you both again beat me to the punch with Roosevelt's because their stuff's phenomenal. It's Jazzwares again. Their customer service is appalling. It's shocking. I bought an AT-AT with a missing gun, and they refused to do anything about it. But for giving them that, and I hope they're listening and they pull the finger out, but for giving them that, when they put things out like that Ghost, all the AT-AT, which is amazing, all the other range of stuff that they've done, the quality, the scalability, the playability, the posability, everything about it's just wonderful. Yeah. So for me, it's probably my favorite line of anything in the last 5 years. Yeah. Certainly in terms of toys, I think they're absolutely smashing it. My room is just scattered with all around. If you walked around the room, you would just be seeing Jazzware stuff everywhere, and I want more. So I wish it was easy to get in the UK because it's a bit of a pig to try and get it over here. Yeah. But what they do get over here and what does get released is fantastic. So massive hats off to Jazzwares. But Jazzwares, if you're listening, your customer service sucks.
And as well as the ships, I love the little figures that come with them as well. You know, for the scale, they are nicely detailed, just right, bang on.
Yeah. Next up, another pick, and our final pick for 2024 is, what was the best news story to come out in 2024? Now, you can use your own criteria for how you define best. But Paul, I'll start with you. What was your favorite or best news story of the year?
Well, I mean, you know, again, there's a history of these articles coming out and then nothing actually happening. But when they announced the new Star Wars trilogy, the fact that they'd effectively shelved the Daisy Ridley film in favor of potentially a trilogy, well, that's a win-win-win, isn't it? So for me, when that broke, that was my story of the year.
Mr. Newbold, you've been front and centre as editor-in-chief. Every news story you've had your finger on the button of, has there been one that was a standout in the past year for you?
I would probably say, given that it's now pretty much within a few days, 5 years, half a decade since Rise of Skywalker, the date of Mando and Grogu being confirmed, I think it's 22nd of April. No, yeah, 22nd of May 26. So we're 18 months away from the next Star Wars film. So that having a destination, having a target to aim for now, given that, as you both have said, that I think we only get Andor next year, we're probably going to get more animation, almost certainly, with Visions and other sort of rumored animation shows that are coming. I know there's a season 2 of Light and Magic coming. You know, there's other stuff happening, but nothing sort of concrete now, other than other than Ahsoka season 2, which films here actually, sort of springtime, and hopefully the Mangold stuff. The only thing that feels concrete on the horizon outside of Andor season 2, in terms of we know when we're getting it, we can set a countdown clock, is Mandalorian and Grogu. So I'm probably going to say that being nailed down, and also the fact, quite apart from it being good news, that so little is leaked because it was made in the volume, because it's a stagecraft production.
Yeah.
Barely anything's leaked from that film. There's Steve Evans made little allusions to it at Farthest From when he was talking, and I've seen stuff and it's really cool. I can't tell you what because they'd shoot me, but it's really cool. You know, so you get vibes of things from that, and whispers through people who know people who've worked on it, but nothing more than that. And I love that. I'll be very happy to go into that sort of spoiler free. But
Wouldn't
I
that
would
be
say
ace?
probably that's the news that's
Yeah. Wouldn't that be amazing to actually be able to sit down on the night
really would.
first time you saw it and know nothing about it? Be amazing.
Or like the little green frog just appears and you go, oh
That's
my
the
god,
hope.
who's that?
That's definitely the hope.
It's a strange one, The Mandalorian. I'm not sure if I'm excited for it or not.
Oh, mate.
It's it's an odd choice, and I think because of the way that season 3 ended, it's kind of sucked the excitement a little bit out of it. So I feel there's a lot of work needed to big up that film and promote that film before it's released. So as much as I kind of like the idea of being able to walk in and not knowing what to expect, I kind of think from a marketing point of view that's the worst thing that probably Lucasfilm could do. My pick for News Story of the
They've
Year.
got some work to do for sure. Yeah.
My pick for the News Story of the Year, it's not one that we covered, but it's one that we chose not to cover. Because I have a dark sense of humor.
I know what you're going to say.
And it was one that was published on Forbes.com, who promote themselves as being focused on business and investing and being some kind of financial institution of sorts. And they did an article on The Acolyte, how, in their views, that Acolyte was not going to be released and it had been cancelled. And their basis was that the steering company behind The Acolyte was late in filing one of its returns to Companies House. And obviously, as an accountant, I know all about Companies House and the filing of financial records and forms to Companies House, and I know exactly how it works and what happens if you're late and the consequences and all that. But Forbes had gone to Google to learn what this meant, and they'd come up with a conclusion that King Charles now owned the rights to The Acolyte. And they had lost the rights to The Acolyte on the basis that they'd been late filing a form to Companies House, all purely because if you Google it, it'll come up with if a company goes dormant and they get no response and it's late in all its filings, eventually the assets go back to the privilege of the king or the queen. But really it just means that the government takes the assets and liquidates them and sells them and we all carry on as if nothing happened. It's fairly common procedure, but Forbes just got it so completely wrong that it just made me tickle pink. And the worst consequences if you file late at Companies House is a fine that you could pay out of the pockets, change in your pocket.
Yeah.
But ultimately, all it takes is to say, "Oh, I'm very sorry, I filed that late. We're still active," and everything just carries on as normal. That's all it takes is one phone call.
Oh dear.
And that's what tickled me pink this past year. Little things like that. I like a little when major corporations like Forbes, global media companies just get something spectacularly wrong. Never listen to what
Genius.
AI tells you when you Google now. It's always the AI result at the top of Google. Never believe it. Seek financial advice when looking at the financial matters.
That's a genius answer, Brian. Love that.
So that was my very sad and pedantic story of the year. But I kind of agree a little bit with you, Paul, that the most interesting story probably is what's happening with the Ray movie. I did find it funny that the story came out it's really exciting, there's going to be a big announcement really soon, and then a few days later the writer got was announced to be sacked. That was brutal. Not what they intended, but obviously there's a whole idea that it's perhaps going from one film to a trilogy. It seems to be a little bit in development hell. I would like some clarity. But in the same mind, don't tell us what's happening until you know yourself what's happening. We don't need announcements at Celebration that you're making XYZ movies when you don't even have something that you're happy with to make.
Get 3/4 of the way into the production and then announce it.
Yeah, have a script that you like. The starting point.
Have a director you're going to keep.
Yeah. So
I like the idea of it to be in 10, 11, and 12. That would be cool.
So that's our last pick for what's best. Because it's the last show of the year, I'm going to throw a surprise topic on you just to see where you go. But what do you want from 2025? We've kind of touched on this before, Paul, in previous shows. But we haven't with Mr. Newbold here, and obviously we're just here on the verge of entering a new year. If one thing could happen in the Star Wars wheelhouse in 2025, Mark, what would you like it to be?
Wow. I like the point you made about stability and not announcing things until they're concrete and definitely happening. I'd like to see more of that for sure. On a completely selfish note, I'd like them to announce some kind of future for the Star Cruiser, because it's still sitting there in the dust covers and I think it's criminal. But most importantly, just a stable future, just to know that we have a pipeline of films coming and that there's a confidence in the scripts and there's a confidence in the directors. Please, can we get away from writer-directors? Can we have writers and then directors, so that you've got a story in place like Marvel does, and then they put a good director, a solid hand in charge of it. We don't need to keep reinventing the wheel. It's Star Wars. We know what the sandbox perimeters are. Let's just tell good stories within that. It doesn't confine it. It doesn't put inhibitors or inhibitions on anything. It's Star Wars. You can go as crazy as you want, but I just want some stability now as we head towards the 50th, which is only a couple of years away now. I want Star Wars to be kind of back, sort of peak genre, peak entertainment, top IP. It's not fallen away completely, but far from it. It's still a major IP, but it does feel like it's been burnished a little bit, and I want to see that luster go, and I want to see the shine come back. So I just want some stability, get some good hands in, get some solid stories told, and just feel confident that when they announce something, we're going to get it.
Paul?
Yeah, I'd like to see that by the end of Skeleton Crew, that we've got perhaps in some ways a solid wrap up to that season, but with the prospects of there being further adventures of those characters, because more than anything I can remember in a long time now, maybe Mandalorian season 2, this seems to be universally well liked, what we're currently watching. So I'm hoping that by the time we get into the new year and we've had the remaining episodes, that everybody loves it, and that because of the want for further adventures, that we get either a season 2 or maybe even a film, maybe even a solid film based off the back of it. And it doesn't necessarily need to be Skeleton Crew season 2. It could be a spin-off for one of the characters, some of the characters. But I do think that they've struck quite a seam of gold with the ideas on this one. I think you said earlier, Brian, you like the mystery aspect of it. Maybe even that they go back to the Old Republic and we see At-Atin and the other prefixed planets. What do they refer to them as? The
Neo's lovers planets.
That's it. The jewels.
9 jewels of the
Neil's jewels.
Yeah.
But I think that there's certainly opportunities for them to talk about these planets again, either in the past tense or go further into the future with the characters. But yeah, I think it'll be a shame for them not to continue the adventure if by the end of this season it is still so held in such high regard. So
Yeah.
that's what I'd like
It
to
would be
see
nice
more.
to start the new year with the announcement in January that it's going to continue.
Yes, yeah.
My biggest fear, I guess, is massive change in budgets for Disney Plus shows might just snooker it.
Yeah.
But if we can make it work.
Is Donald Trump a Star Wars fan?
Well, I don't know. Talking of people making a return, it leads me to my pick for what I want in 2025.
Go on.
I would like for Palpatine to return. Now, that may seem controversial, but wouldn't it be wonderful if he just popped up in Andor?
Well, yes, but I mean that's feasible.
I just
So
think,
you know how like Disney.
imagine how the internet would break down if you had Vader.
There he is.
Yeah.
There he
Hey.
is.
If you had Vader, Palpatine, Krennic, and Tarkin
Yeah.
all sitting down having lunch round the coffee table on the Death Star on season 2 at Andor. Wouldn't that be amazing?
I want to see a live action scene of the Robot Chicken classic where he's on the escalator going.
Vader lifting
Stormtrooper,
his mask up, drinking his little drink from the desk.
Trooper.
Stormtrooper, Stormtrooper.
But it would be great just see them breaking out their plans for how they're going to bring peace to the galaxy. That's what
I'd
you
like
want
to see them talking about where they're going to put the coffee machine or something like that on the desk. Something really mundane. But that's what we need. Where are we going to put the toilet block?
Yeah.
That's what we need.
Who decided to not cover up the exhaust port? That's the kind of discussion.
We all know what that was an aesthetic decision. We all know why.
Yeah. Terrible. So that's what I want to see. Controversial, but I want to see Palpatine return in 2025. I think it could. It just needs to be on a nice subtle scene. It could be one with Mon Mothma. Just a nice creepy kind of. But she's itching to create the rebellion, and he's there, kind of knowing what she's up to. Just it could make something quite special.
Yeah, no, I like that.
So that's my hope. On that note, Mark, we're going to bid farewell to you because me and Paul, we're going to go and dissect Skeleton Crew and Bone Voyage. And obviously, people can check your opinions on Skeleton Crew out on Making Tracks Reaction Crew each and every week with Mark Mulcaster. So, good night to you, Mark.
No.
Absolutely.
Bone Voyage, Mark. Bone Voyage.
Bone Voyage, Mark. We're just going to head on off on our pirate ship. And we'll catch up with you again in 2025, I'm sure. Welcome to this week's Bone Voyage as we explore episode 5 of Skeleton Crew. Paul, initially, let's start off with your general thoughts on the episode.
Loads better than episode 4. A real return to form. Very, very much like a Goonies, Indiana Jones kind of vibe to it. Just really enjoyed it. Even the kids dressing up as what some of the older UK viewers might remember as Michael Bentine's Potty Time, or for younger viewers, very much Lord of the Rings kind of characters for the elders, which I thought was quite a nice addition. But yeah, overall, I thought it was. It felt Star Wars. It felt very much like a Marvel Comics kind of iteration of Star Wars from perhaps back in the early 80s. I like the inclusion of the mud baths, and that would have been a much better version of that god awful casino planet we had in The Last Jedi. That would have been far better. But what did you think? Did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it. There was elements of it I didn't like, but we'll probably get to that. But yeah, overall, I kind of agree with you. It was a marked improvement on episode 4, although I do suspect that episode 4 will become more enjoyable once we've seen the whole series.
I agree with you there. I think it'll probably become a pivotal episode. I think it'll be a very important episode. Yeah.
But yeah, a weird change of direction, but I was quite happy with that kind of weird change of direction, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's dive right in though.
Okay.
And we kicked off the episode at Wendell's work, which had very much Coruscant vibes that we've seen in The Mandalorian. It was kind of how I felt when we sort of saw the office kind of space and workspace there. Wendell was at work, and Neil's mum turns up, sporting a device that'll allow Wendell to hack into the computer system to get a code to allow them to get beyond the barrier, which, again, Paul probably suggests that these people are kind of hostage on their own planet.
It's weird, isn't it? Yeah. I tell you what it reminds me of, and I only saw a few episodes of it. Sunday lunches growing up. The Prisoner, the one that had the great big white wobbly ball on the beach, where you're made to feel like this is utopia, but you can't go anywhere. You're a prisoner. Yeah.
So Wendell's convinced to use the device, and of course that leads to one of the security droids interrupting him and demanding to see what he's hiding behind his back, which was the device that Neil's mum had given him. And the droid basically takes him to the boss, who turns out to be no other than Fern's mother. But
It's
Fern's
a very
mother,
handmade looking device, isn't it? That device looks like it's been made by a 5-year-old. It's brilliant. USB into USB.
What's Neil's brother that stamped in Neil's head? I should remember him.
Oh, I can't remember his name now.
Started with a J. Can't remember. He probably made it. Anyway, Fern's mother, funnily enough, uses the same technique that young Fern uses in overriding the droid and having the droid forget about the whole incident. As creepy Wendell peers round the corner there. They then get into a bit of an argument over what the right way ahead is. Fern's mum still wants to go down the official channels and petition the supervisor, who I maintain doesn't exist anymore. I think he's dead and the droids are running the whole show.
Well, I think it's either that, or it could even end up being somebody like Snoke.
Yeah.
Which should be, or a version of Snoke, and there could be a Snoke on each of these planets, At-Atin and At-Akran. They could all have their own version of Snoke.
That's a good one, yeah. But eventually, Fern's mama kind of agrees to go along with the plan. So, looks like the parents are going to venture off in potentially to try and reach their kids. Meanwhile, the kids are on the Onyx Cinder, and they've got SM-33 all tied up, and they basically want to find out what's the story, what does he know, and he basically spouts a tale that gets Jod very excited about pirate captain Renaud, who apparently is very famous, whose name actually is just Donner, the director of The Goonies spelled backwards.
Right,
Richard
course,
Donner.
Yes.
Yeah. And that makes Jod realise that the ship they're on is the Onyx Cinder, which has its very own reputation as well. And he kind of gets the whole story about sort of the pirate lore and history here. Which comes back to you have a lot to learn about pirates. It's quite a well-phrased title for this episode. And Jod kind of recounts the tale of who Renaud is to the kids. And the kids basically ask SM-33 to take them to Reynolds' lair, where it's believed that he'll have kept the coordinates for Tatooine, which is Skullridge Mountain, and SM-33 says okay, and basically gets up and breaking all the ropes holding him down, which was quite amusing. And this is which takes us on this week's adventure, all planned and laid out as they head to Skullridge Mountain, which feels very 1980s Disney.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. It it's basically boiled down to its essence, isn't it? There's no sort of like oh, let's make this a little bit sort of mysterious. It's here you go. You you're gonna have all the things that you would expect to see. No problem. Just have it all. It was the Gavin and Stacey of Star Wars. There you
We get a little scene as well where John starts to get his frustrations vented about the kids as the kids are trying to make decisions, and you can see his disgust there. But he ends up actually comforting Wim a little bit. Wim, who kind of has a little moment, it would be safe to say, and Jod shows his kindness for a moment in this episode, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, it was during this scene as well that he uses a little bit of the Force as well to float Wim's electronic device back into his hands, and he starts questioning him about whether he's a Jedi or not again. But this bit was mostly about Wim, who had been perhaps the one who had wanted adventure more than anybody else, but then really has become the home bird of the kids. He's the one that really, really desperately wants to go home. I know they all do, but he's the one that's getting most upset and down about it. But yeah, Judd was quite comforting with him at this point. He's a very complicated character.
Yes.
These multiple characters played by Jude Law, and I think he's doing a really good job of it.
Yeah, he's obviously spent years as a pirate and has the tendencies of a pirate, but there's a story there we don't yet know that's scarred him somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
And he's got a little bit of compassion to him that you might not expect from a bloodthirsty pirate.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect he probably became a pirate as a kid, and so he can sort of still have that childlike quality to him.
Yeah. So they arrive at Skullridge Mountain, which, much to SM-33's disgust, has been turned into a hotel and spa resort, now called Lenopa.
Yeah,
Which
Jod was very excited about, wasn't
he? Yeah, because Jod's British, so Jod knows what the Thunderbirds are. Very much Tracy Island.
Very Tracy Island, definitely Tracy Island. Yeah.
So they arrive. Kids are all dressed up, as you mentioned earlier.
They're not allowed to be kids, are they? Well,
yeah.
Kids aren't allowed on the planet, so it must be like an 18+ kind of vibe going on here.
Yeah.
So yeah, they turned up looking like extras from Michael Bentine's Potty Time or Lord of the Rings, whichever fits your generation.
I would have said Fern on the left there looks a little bit like the pirate in Pirates of the Caribbean when he's got the whole squid face going on and his tentacles are dangling down.
Yeah. Was that David Locke? I can't remember what it was. Yeah.
So here we are at the spa resort, and SM-33, he's not getting his nipple tweaked there. He's getting fitted with a restraining bolt, which all droids should have
the sad thing,
bolts.
Brian, is I was about to say exactly that.
All droids should have restraining bolts. So this is my kind of resort. This is my kind of place. I would be happy here. Droids are restrained. We get a little tour around the facilities. That's Mrs. Kettleman from Better Call Saul, if anyone's familiar. And we see that it's been turned into kind of like a mud pool resort kind of thing going on.
Very cool. Yeah.
And we get introduced to the character of Pocket, played by
Great
Kelly
name.
MacDonald, who starred across from Ewan McGregor in the Train Spotting duology. She's a bounty hunter, and unfortunately she knows Jod, not as Jod, but as one of his aliases, and causes Jod all sorts of tension because he suddenly realizes that the pirates, I guess, are going to be en route to hunt him down. And he pays a lot of credits to the resort to basically keep Stoom and let
And to
them,
upgrade his room.
let him do what he needs to do with the kids.
Mm.
So they check into their suite, and SM33 tells them what they're looking for, which is basically Reynolds' symbol, which weirdly, Paul, you'll probably not be familiar with, but looks a little bit like the symbol for the Nile, who were the main antagonistic characters in the High Republic series.
Okay.
They had like a three line kind of similar symbol to this.
Right. Okay.
No idea if that's relevant, but we'll throw it out there.
Might be.
And we'll have our sort of second incident with Jod where he kind of falls out with the kids because kids being kids want to hang out a little bit in the resort and enjoy the facilities. It appears Jod basically reminding them that this is all about getting to Atin and his hopes to get some money out of the deal. And as we mentioned, Pocket has contacted Brutus, our good friend Brutus Paul.
Very good friend of mine. Very, very good friend.
And basically told him where Jod is. We'll get
And then we get this nice segue into a hut. Brilliant.
Yeah, we get a little bit of a tour of the result. We've got having a lovely mud bath there. Good for the skin. And the kids and the droids just wander around the resort looking for this symbol. And the banking clan have a meeting at the resort.
Yeah, they get mentioned, don't they? And
Yeah.
that must be doing the mud bath. Yeah.
Which I kind of thought was interesting because we're now in the New Republic era. And obviously the banking clan were big supporters of the Empire. Certainly during the rise of Palpatine to power. So they're obviously still there. Everybody hates a banker, appears, but they're ever present. But the security notice Jod and the kids and they kind of challenge them, which leads them to kind of run away. But meanwhile, Fern and Wim underground in the catacombs have discovered Reynolds' symbol. And they encounter our alien friend of the week. Because we're kind of loving the fact that there's so many aliens in this show. And this is Catholips, our good friend Catholips, Paul.
Absolutely huge. And I like the way that the arms, when they come out of the water, it's almost like they're too heavy on the end and they kind of flop to the ground in front of the kids. But yeah, I mean, absolutely massive. But the cute thing about him is he loves a good story. So the kids start telling him a story, and that's all he wanted to hear. He just wanted to just chill out and hear a story.
Nobody ever speaks to him and gives him any news. And all he wanted was a little bit of attention. Meanwhile, John's still got issues with KB and Neil, but KB uses her cunning intelligence to activate some pipes to cover the security guards in mud, which I thought
blow
was
them into the pit.
rather amusing. Which gives them enough time to join Fern and Wim rather underground. And you can kind of see there Fern and Wim just hanging out with Catholics telling stories, which I thought was quite amusing. I quite liked it. Just like that visual. And Catholips, as you forementioned, has got weird arm things.
Yeah.
Comes out and breaks open the entranceway to Reynolds' secret vault. And meanwhile, the pirates have arrived on the planet, which was incredibly quick. But, you know, we don't worry too much about timelines. It's all about the story. And the kids in SM-33 start their adventure through the Reynolds vault. So they didn't spend a lot of time traveling through the tunnels and so on, but we got the odd classic Goonies booby trap or Indiana Jones type booby trap.
Yeah.
And the customary Neil ruining it for everybody by standing on traps.
Typical Neil.
I hate that. Hate that elephant. What he did to Runa, poor Runa. Just a reminder for everyone: Team Runa.
Hey, Team Runa.
And the pirates are here, but they don't stick around for too long. We'll come back to them shortly. But we get the nice visual we got from the trailer, and Pocket's with them as well. And they're on pursuit as they head deeper underground. But they come to this sort of cavern that's filled with acid. And it's got Reynolds' signia above it with an inscription, which I can't remember what the inscription was, but it was along the lines of "show some generosity."
Yeah.
And Jod figures it out and throws in an Old Republic. I was going to say an Old Republic dime, but I think it's worth a lot more than that. Which results in the acid being drained away. And allows them.
They were able to walk on those steps quite quickly afterwards as well, weren't they?
Yeah, it was dried up completely and like no residue, which allows them to enter the vault, which we saw in the trailer, which did look quite a stunning set, I thought.
Reminded me of the Mummy.
It did, yeah.
The Brendan Fraser film, The Mummy, yeah.
Or even National Treasure from Disney films.
That's a
as
great
well.
film. Well, the two of them, the two films are good.
You may not have noticed the muscular golden Neil there, which grabbed Neil's attention, I believe. Which, again, with this obsession about and the species, we don't really know what Neil is, but his species keeps appearing in the images and now in the statues. So obviously, that alien species has a long connection in the and history.
Maybe his species is the treasure.
Well, that's taking it too far. That emphasizes why, though, when you've got a muscular golden elephant like that, that's why Neil's got this Lothario behaviors where he's cheating on, false I remember, Team Runa. That's where he gets this from, you know. Obviously, there's a history there, I think. Also, amongst the treasure, Wim notices a lightsaber. And Neil notices some food. But crucially, Neil notices that one of the items of food hasn't rotted like the other items.
Yeah.
He goes to touching it, and the floor below the seat begins to collapse, but Jod kind of pulls them back. And Jod realizes this, if he lifts up the lovely roast that maybe some of you are having for New Year's dinner, opens up, I guess it's like a computer, basically. Boots up the computer.
Yeah.
With Captain Reynolds' symbol on it, which allows SM-33 to tap into the system and flood the tunnels with acid as we hear the poor pirates scream, which we assume Pocket's along there with the pirates as well. So a new character gone in just a couple of scenes.
Well, we think.
We think.
Yeah.
This is the thing. Were you happy with that? Because I was kind of a little bit disappointed because I want to build these pirates up to be something that can be used and tapped into repeatedly. So I was hoping that
Especially when
as
it's
a faction that they would still exist beyond the end of the series.
Yeah, no, I agree. Especially when it's somebody like Kelly MacDonald, who's like, a very capable actor, somebody that you would like to see more from. It will be a shame if they have all been sort of like killed off in that one scene. And who's the guy
Brutus
with
wasn't
the?
there, so obviously Brutus, I
No,
think,
Brutus wasn't.
so he'll
No,
have survived.
and I don't think the character that was in The Mandalorian, he wasn't there either, was he?
No, that's true.
Yeah, I can't think of the name of the character now.
Vance.
But that's it, yeah. But there was yeah, it would be a shame, but I suppose you could technically have like a never-ending supply of these pirates now.
Yeah,
Bringing
that's
different
true.
ones in and out. You could even have the twin of one of them. But yeah, this whole setup was fantastic. I loved all of this stuff, and then here we get the projection of Tack Renard. So
Yeah.
but it's very sort of glitchy, so we don't actually get to see exactly what he's like.
Yes, you kind of see a very faint, vague kind of outline. He
Yeah.
sort of looks human-esque.
Yeah.
I think from that. But he basically reveals the secret of Atatin and why it's considered to be the treasure that everyone's hunting for. And that is that it's the Old Republic Mint. So it produces all the cash,
Yeah.
which, as Neil points out, means it's an endless supply. And Fern kind of reacts to that to remind Jod that he's there not for the treasure, he's there to get them home, and his reward is going to be given to him for getting them home. Jod has a
this
little
was very much
sigh at that. He's basically had enough by this point.
it's the turning point, isn't it? This is
It
where
is.
he sort of kind of reveals himself, really, I suppose.
It was very much a not you mouthing off again kind of moment. And he basically turns to them and challenges Fern to a duel to be captain.
Yeah.
And brings his blade to Fern's throat because Fern kind of can't decide what she's going to do. Wim, who obviously early in the episode had his little moment, decides to step up and be the hero, grabs the lightsaber, and unfortunately sets it off upside down, and has his little moment of shock. Thought he played the role brilliantly throughout the episode. Thought it was acted really, really well.
He just looks totally fed up with himself, doesn't he?
Yeah. So Fern, tears in her eyes, ultimately has to accept that she's no longer captain. So we now have Captain Jod and his right-hand man, SM-33, there, because SM-33 is a droid. He follows commands, and his command is to follow the orders of the captain of the Onyx Cinder. And the kids realise they're in trouble, but Vim comes back with a little bit of a plan, and he hits the button to activate the hole in the floor. So the kids go down it to escape Jod, which to me is wrong, because if it's a booby trap, it's going to lead to your death, surely. So you would think it's going to be a hole with spikes at the bottom of it and not an escape route. For it to be an escape route doesn't make sense.
Unless that was Reynard's sort of way out of that chamber. Maybe that is his exit, and therefore that lands on a lot of lovely cushions.
But when it activated the first time, it was because they stepped on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. There's something just didn't fit. But obviously, they needed to manufacture a way to have the kids escape from Jod.
Yeah.
So what's interesting now, we have Jod and SM-33 in one team, the kids on the other. The pirates more or less eliminated, although I think with Vance and Brutus still being around, there's a possibility they reappear
I
yet.
think there's plenty of them. Yeah, there'll still be plenty of them about. I think they just sent a couple of ships, didn't they, really? But there was some significant characters there. I mean, there was the guy with the cyborg eye.
Yeah.
He was definitely among them. But this scene here, right at the very end, was very cleverly done, where Jod sort of calls the hilt of the lightsaber into his hand. There it is, lying on the floor. I love how there's that gash in the floor from where the blade had gone into the floor. So he calls it into his hand, and then whilst we don't see him ignite the blade, we hear it. So that was real tantalizing stuff for episode 6.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was for me. That episode was back on form, and probably felt of all the episodes we've had so far most Goonie-ish, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
felt more sort of 80s than anything else.
I thought
So yeah,
the whole access to Reynolds' vault was a little bit rushed. Obviously, they went to fit it into one episode of TV. I would have liked it to have been a longer kind of exploration of the
yeah,
tunnels and
yeah.
maybe more elaborate booby traps, and I would have liked the pursuit of the pirates to be a little bit more active in there, because it kind of felt like they turned up and then were killed without any real contribution.
Yeah.
But that,
I mean,
that's just minor kind of complaints.
well, also, I mean, I was just thinking it would have made more sense if we'd seen more of the security trying to get after the kids as well.
Yes.
But I'm guessing that once the pirates got there, they probably killed everybody that we'd seen previously anyway.
Yeah.
So, that lady that you'd seen in Better Call Saul, her character was probably killed as soon as they landed. But yeah, overall, I thought it was a good episode. And like we've said about 4, whilst 4 originally felt a little bit of a breather episode, of a sort of like, not a lot happened. I think that is going to end up being the most significant thing. The fact that we've got all these clone planets potentially, which is quite interesting.
Yeah. Any more thoughts on episode 5? Because we've learnt a lot about pirates this week.
Yeah, I think we got to see probably closer to what Jod's character actually is.
Yeah.
I think he's not as nice as perhaps he was painting himself in earlier episodes. And yeah, do you think he's a Jedi?
No.
No, neither.
I think there's going to be some connection between him and Renaud that we haven't really been told about. Maybe he was rescued as a youngling by one of Renaud's crew, maybe.
Yeah. I think he's going to be related to somebody that we already know.
If he was going to reveal his name, it would be interesting if they revealed his name as being Jod Renaud. Jod.
Yeah.
Renaud. Kind of.
Yeah. Jod Renaud.
Yeah. He's got some connection, I think, to the Onyx Cinder and to Renaud somehow. I don't know what that is necessarily. I think he's got some connection to the Jedi, but I don't think he was necessarily a Jedi himself. Maybe he was rescued as a youngling as part of the Emperor's Purge, something like that.
Yeah, so he could be. Oh, I don't know. I've got a feeling he could be in some way connected to the Empire, but we'll see.
We'll see. Your thoughts on the reveal that Atan's secret is that it's an Old Republic mint?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of it sort of does explain the the volume of Old Republic credits that are knocking around, and the fact that whenever they go off planet, they're worth a lot more than they are on planet. Yeah, and like Neil says, if you're making the money, you can make as much as you like. So that kind of
Do you think
explains
that's
why it's
reason
so
enough for
well.
it to have been hidden away? Because it's the
No, I think it's going to run deeper than that.
yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if it's some sort of weapons factory planet or a droid army planet, hence all the droids. It could even be that it's some sort of training ground. You know, the problem is we go to these planets, but we only go to like a very small part of them. We
Yes.
don't see the whole planet. We see like a city. So it's very difficult to. It would be easy for them to be able to say, "Oh well, on the other side of the planet, this is happening, and that's why it's this top secret planet." It could even be something that was leading up to Darth Sidious's return in The Rise of Skywalker. Because let's face it, that needs explaining. So perhaps this is some sort of apology.
We don't need
That's
another
what it is.
explanation for
It's a
it. We've
long
had
apology.
hundreds of explanations that have somehow Palpatine returned. That's enough. That's all we needed.
Somehow, Assassin existed.
Just somehow Palpatine has returned. That'll do. Figure it out later. Yeah, it's teed it up nicely. We've got 3 episodes to go. I'm quite excited for it. I'm actually quite impressed that they've gotten me this excited about the series. I look forward to it coming out. I didn't expect to feel that way. I kind of thought this was going to be a little bit of fluff.
Yeah.
And I could quite happily just watch it as I watched it, kind of thing. But yeah, no, I'm impressed. It's I'm enjoying it, and I'm loving the fact more than anything they've brought aliens back to Star Wars, not just in Primary Rose, because in Primary Rose we've got an elephant and an owl and a dog, basically. So I'm not that impressed. But every background scene you've got, every alien imaginable from the original trilogy right through to the sequel trilogy, they're all up kind of appearing there, so I'm enjoying that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that was my one big complaint about certainly the sequel trilogy was the fact that they all and we've met Neil Scanlon, and the work he's done is brilliant, but it doesn't mean you eradicate all your previous aliens.
Yeah.
Add to them, don't remove those from the equation. So when you see a Rhodian turn up or an Ithorian, it just puts you back in Star Wars straight away. So yeah, they've been really good with that. Definitely, yeah. More creatures, please.
I think the banking clan being in there
Yeah,
is going to end up being significant. Maybe not in this series, but it wouldn't surprise me if we see them appear in The Mandalorian and Grogu or somewhere along the line.
yeah. And I think that this series has been so popular, it would be pretty daft for them not to do some sort of spin-off from it.
Yeah.
There's got to be some further adventures of Jod and or the kids. But yeah, it would be a shame not to see some more adventures with the characters from Skeleton Crew.
Fantastic. On that note, I think time to end this week's Bone Voyage and remind everybody that Bone Voyage is part of Good Morning Tatooine, your weekly recap of all the latest Star Wars news, live streaming every Sunday at 9 p.m. in the UK, 4 p.m. in New York, and of course it's released every Monday at 7 p.m. on Fantha Tracks TV. And Paul, that brings us to the end of this week's episode of Good Morning Tatooine as well.
Oh, what a year!
What a year! Well, we'll come back next year.
Why not? Should we meet again on the 5th?
Yeah, let's come back on the 5th. We'll be back on the 5th with a live show, and look forward to meeting you all in the chat and seeing what your thoughts are, how your Christmas and New Year's went. If you got anything nice from Santa, Star Wars themed, and meanwhile, what can we do? Have we got the promos? We don't have the promos lined up, do we? Yes, we do. Let's bring the promos up. Whilst you're relaxing over the New Year's period, you could head to fantatracks.com and get clued up on all the latest Star Wars news in a single file. Daily Star Wars news from Star Wars and Lucasfilm, covering everything from films, TV, collecting, fashion, gaming, literature, music and art, and of course, interviews, event coverage, podcasts, and reviews.
And if you're all up to date on those things, why not get involved with social media? We've got Instagram, Facebook, Threads, X, and TikTok. And you really have got no excuse not to keep up to date with all the Star Wars content from Fantatrax.
And of course, Fantatrax Radio as well. Just go to your podcatcher of choice and type in Fantatrax Radio. A whole host of shows up there. And Paul, one of your shows, Start Your Engines as well.
Yeah, the latest one is up now, which was for the Y-Wing.
And last but not least, check out Fantatrax TV. Always up there on YouTube. You'll catch us live on Facebook, Twitch, and X. And Jabba's Court as well. We'll be back in 2025, and we're finally going to launch Fantla Arcade. I say this every week, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen. All it needs is me to find 5 minutes of my time in my life, and we'll make it happen. So yeah, it's definitely coming next year, guaranteed.
Yeah.
I never said when next year. I've got 12 months. Paul,
November.
Thank you for joining me in Good Morning Tatooine this year. It's been great to have you as my co-host on the show. I'm enjoying doing it every week.
Been my pleasure, mate. Been my pleasure, mate.
Come back for more next year, why don't you?
Oh, go on then.
Yeah. And on that note, it's time to end the show and the highlights. So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him. Goodbye.
Keep up to date with the latest Star Wars news each and every day on Panthatrax.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, and Pinterest at Panthatrax. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow Panthatrax TV to be alerted to new content and to be a part of our live shows.